Hello, it's just me today, but I'm here to talk about a few news stories, including the crisis in Israel. There's more examples of ChatGPT fouling up, and one of them is interesting. There's a list of nonsense words that it will give you misinterpret as numbers and such, and people wondered what this was about, and it turns out that they trained this thing on Reddit, which might explain a whole lot of its bad behavior. And in particular, there's a group of people on Reddit that are counting to infinity by just posting posts that count up through numbers forever. And these special words are the names of those users. And of course, it has learned that the name of those users should be followed by a number. And the name of those users sits in order of numbers and probably is another way to write a number and so on. So it's understandable how it ended up this way. And it turns out that Microsoft modified ChatGPT to make it more belligerent. And so it appears to be maybe they were trying to make it more relatable or more emotional or more human, but they say the previous version did not have these outrageous problems of insulting people, threatening people, lying and clinging to lies, and things like that, which are an increasing number of posts of them showing how it will threaten to hurt you and just be very disturbing, which sounds like it has learned from the dirty parts of the internet to be belligerent and nasty, and it's just imitating what it's seen, of course. It doesn't even know what it's saying. It's just predicting words one by one. So what you've done is create a sort of surface level simulation of average internet chat speak, which is why people find it intolerable and unreasonable. So the Air Force has an AI-controlled jet fighter. They've been testing it, and it's succeeding. So they're moving closer to automated, autonomous killer drones straight out of science fiction movies. And the Israeli crisis. Benjamin Netanyahu is in big trouble. The prime minister of Israel, he is in a lot of court hearings. He's very, very much like Donald Trump, but more successful because he's smarter. And he is got huge corruption problems and huge trials coming up, and he is responding by taking away the power of the judiciary to try him, by turning the judiciary into just something under his control, which is one of the things Trump wanted to do. Trump wanted to, and you can see what happened. I mean, Trump appointed a bunch of Supreme Court justices, and after that, he expected them to rubber stamp his claims, like the claim that he won the election even though he lost it, and he was horrified and felt betrayed when they would not do that. And this shows the strength of the American system. Even though they were appointed by Trump and they had to pretend to go along with everything to get in the job, once they were on the job, they to some extent returned to enforcing real laws and real rules, and they didn't just join the mob and do whatever the mob boss said, which is what Trump expected. And in Israel, he's trying to implement that. And so there's huge protests all over the place. As people say, if Netanyahu gets to do what he's doing, it's basically the collapse of the Israeli government into a autocracy, just ruled by a dictator, which is, the same thing Trump tried to do here, but he wasn't as successful here. The American system of checks and balances, and I must say especially the free press, are extremely strong. And the other nations are collapsing because their institutions are less strong than ours. And ours is on the brink of collapse, but it hasn't collapsed yet. And it may be recovering a bit from the last election. We're going to see. The bird flu. You keep hearing about humans getting it. Now the bird flu is killing off so many birds. It's creating an egg shortage and a lot of problems. So European countries like France have started inoculating their birds with vaccines, like the COVID vaccine. And the United States is not doing this yet because this sounds sort of twisted and insane. The belief is if you inoculate the birds, the vaccine, like the COVID vaccine, does not completely stop infection and transmission, but it stops your birds from dying. And therefore, if you import birds from countries that have allowed the vaccine, they think it's more likely to bring the disease in. So this is a whole lot like the anti-vax argument. The vaccine people are shedding and making things worse. This seems illogical to me. But anyway, that is what's going on. That's why the U.S. is reluctant to authorize vaccinating birds, although other nations have figured out it is necessary. The bird flu has become endemic like COVID. It's going to be in the wild birds. It's going to be in all the birds. There's no hope of keeping it out. So what you have to do is manage it with a vaccine, which is where we've ended up with COVID. Even China's ended up there with COVID. I was very pleased to read this article. I've noticed something in the last few years. It's very difficult to drive at night. Now, I'm getting older and my vision is not as good. And I thought maybe it was me, but it's not. It's a real problem. Headlights are much, much brighter than they used to be for two reasons. Well, they mentioned three reasons. One I knew about, which is a lot of cars have their headlights misaligned. But the other one is a lot of cars are just much higher, which is what I noticed. They're so high, they're blasting right in my rear window. And the other thing is the new headlights made of LEDs are more blue than the yellower lights we had before that. And I thought that was a ridiculous explanation because I know the human eyes are not very sensitive to blue light. I used to do vision research. I learned about this. But it turns out that the sensors they use to measure the brightness of headlights for them to meet a certain number are in particular insensitive to blue, even more than the human eye. So when you crank them up to the maximum allowed brightness on that meter, they are much brighter in the human eye. So that is a ridiculous technological problem where they don't use meters that match the sensitivity of the human eye. But they say the legal obstacles to changing that are very strong. So we're going to be stuck with these blinding headlights at night for many more years. There's an article on NPR that's very interesting, which is a lot coming out all over the place because it comes from court filings showing that something that it's important to be reminded. The modern Republican Party and Fox News in particular is a Hollywood theatrical show. Those Fox News people don't even believe what they're saying. They blow with the wind. And this was why they lost a lot of audience, because they actually turned against Trump, called the election against Trump, and tried to be against Trump a few times. And every time they had to realize their audience would all leave, so then they went back. And they all knew that the big lie was a big lie. They knew Trump lost the election. They don't believe the anti-vax stuff they say. I imagine they do believe some of the racist, bigoted stuff they say about immigrants, but I don't think. But mostly, it's just a theatrical show, and the evidence has come out showing behind the scenes all the nighttime hosts like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Maria Bartiromo are completely laughing at this, saying Trump is an idiot. He really lost. We know he lost. And then on the air, they have to say the opposite. Let me say, look, we all know he lost. We all know that the vaccines are good, but on the air, you have to say, I'm not sure about the vaccines, but I think that was there. On the air, you must say the opposite because that's what the audience wants to hear, and say, look, this is just a show. We say what the audience wants to consume, and don't worry about the fact that it's not real. And this, I think, has been a long-going problem with the Republican Party for a long time. And this is responsible for one thing I hear tons of times from political pundits. They say Republicans are always put up by Democrats because Democrats are self-righteously preaching and saying, we're doing the right thing, and why are you doing the wrong thing, and why are you just a bigot, and here I am, moral and righteous. And this is a fundamental problem. Most Democratic politicians believe what they're saying. Like, you could argue with Bernie Sanders or AOC, but you can't argue with their sincerity. They really believe what they're saying. They think they know what should be done. They feel like there's good reasons for it, and they stand firm on it. And Republicans are primarily fake, just totally fake, especially now. I mean, I think there's almost no Republican in office until maybe 2 years ago, the latest wave, that actually believes anything about Trump's lies about election fraud and such. They know it's garbage, and they peddle it. And it goes so far as to some of them actually have advanced degrees. Many of them do, advanced degrees from major universities. They're really experts, and then they carefully put on the appearance of being a dumb hick, even adopting a fake Southern accent and stuff to appeal to their voters. This is something to understand. It's propaganda, it's theater, and it fools people. Their audience appears to be, at the moment, more gullible than the Democratic audience for this stuff. The Democrats, I think, do represent their constituents to a greater extent. The Republicans just pretend to represent their constituents, especially now that a large portion of their constituents are these crazy MAGA types, and very few of those Republicans are really MAGA types. You can go back just a few years and see what they said before Trump won about how he's horrible and we can't go along with any of this garbage. That's what they really think. Now they're pretending to think something else, just to sort of maintain power, hoping that somebody else will end this MAGA and Trump stuff, and they won't have to be responsible for it. Anyway, then Elon Musk has a complaint, and as I've been finding increasingly lately, I'm going to support Elon Musk's side, although he's a pretty repellent guy. They found a flaw in Teslas, that the way they stop at stoplights is not consistent with some state laws, so they have to have an update to the software to make them obey the law about stopping. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but it sounds sort of like they don't stop all the way or something. And so they describe this as a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration recall of 360,000 vehicles. And Musk got on Twitter and said, all I'm doing is updating software over the air. People don't need to stop driving that car. They don't need to take it to the shop or anything. Why do they call that a recall and make everybody freak out and make our stock price fall when it's really what in the computer industry you would just call a routine update? And he's kind of got a point. Anyway, Anker battery packs, however, ANKER, apparently have a serious problem. A house is actually burned down from them. You can just have them, you put them sitting in like luggage for like a week unused, and it just sparks and catches fire, which is a problem with lithium battery packs. And what's surprising is their idea of a recall is they're telling you just discard it. Don't throw it in the trash, dispose of it appropriately. Don't use it, quit using it immediately, and just throw it away and just contact us and we'll give you a refund. They don't even want them back to fix them. So that's pretty extreme. So if you have an Anker battery pack, you should get rid of it. You can check. I've got a link here. You can check and make sure if it's the affected model. A English teacher in Japan wrote about how Japanese schools work, and I must say I was quite impressed. They say, of course, everybody has to take off their outdoor shoes when they come in, and they said the students clean the entire school from top to bottom every day, and they keep everything clean. And this seems to me like a pretty good idea. I'm used to American schools that are pretty messed up and have pretty lackadaisical janitor staff, and the students, I think a lot of them have not really learned how to do household chores, not really learned how to take care of themselves properly, and that probably be a good thing to teach them in school. And anyway, I put a link here. Checkmarks put out a capture the flag to practice API security, which is the signals used by cell phones to fetch data from servers for cell phone apps. And there's a lot of ridiculous problems with those. And so they had made a little capture the flag competition, and I set up a server so everybody can easily try it. I thought it's very nice. So I put a link here. Anybody's welcome to play it if you like and learn how to test application program interfaces for common flaws, which I highly recommend because just like I found years ago with mobile phone apps, these APIs are ridiculously insecure. One of the most common flaws, which most of these are, is the developer will design a web page so that you can't see some data. For example, your profile might have credit card information on the server. This one does. And then you can click and view another person's profile. And when you view it, of course, it doesn't show you the credit card information, but in fact, it is fetching that information from the server and transmitting it over the wire, and then just not displaying it on the page. So the developers made it so what you see looks okay, but behind the scenes, the way it handles the data is unsafe. And that's what tends to happen with APIs, and that's what most of these security flaws are. So if you learn how to use a tool like Postman and Burp to send the API calls and observe the responses directly, you can see what's happening under the hood and see how dangerous it is. And I think this is a very good skill for people to learn. So anyway, that's it for this one, and I'll have another one on Tuesday.